Invincible's conflict with Cecil in season 3 is one of the best parts of the entire season. However, although it is definitely a catalyst for a great story, I think it is very clear which one of those two characters is actually in the right and which one of them is just totally out of their mind. And that's why today we're talking Invincible was right and Cecil is an idiot. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Alright, so getting right into it, first and foremost, I feel like it is always important to see both sides, see where Cecil is coming from, before I make the bold statement and the bold claim that Cecil is just an idiot who did the wrong thing. So as the series progresses, during the course of the show, we've been able to see through flashbacks from Cecil, his introduction to Omni-Man, how he initially meets him, and the bond that they end up sharing. And we know that Omni-Man has been there for about 20 years by the time season 1 starts. And Cecil even says that Omni-Man was one of Cecil's closest friends. He's one of the people he ended up trusting most. So him ultimately betraying the planet, killing all of the Guardians, definitely does justify in a way for Cecil to have some sort of contingency if anything happened like that ever again. Especially when it comes to a Viltrumite. He saw firsthand just how much of a threat they can really be. And while I can agree with him that using the Reaniman is objectively a good idea, especially when they only use corpses, I feel like based on everything that has happened up until that point, it is all justified and it is technically in the right. And even if you wanted to say that him recruiting the second Darkwing wasn't totally a mistake on his part, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. He's placed on the Guardians of the Globe. He's under constant surveillance, so there is virtually no way for him to step out of line. However, all that being said, having these contingencies for Viltrumites makes a lot of sense. But to me, having these contingencies, and not only that, but utilizing some of them against Mark is one of the most absurd things that Cecil has ever done within the context of the show so far. And honestly, there are a couple reasons that I say that. First and foremost, Cecil knows about the altercation and even the conversation that Mark had in season 1 with Omni-Man. However, even before that, Cecil wants to get Omni-Man off planet. Cecil needs to do so that he can investigate further into what happened to the Guardians of the Globe, so he can investigate Nolan even further. However, Nolan doesn't want to do this. He's already suspicious of Cecil. He has no interest in helping off-world. And it's at this point that Mark volunteers himself. And in this moment, Cecil actually looks at it as an opportunity to see what Invincible can truly do. And although Omni-Man has clear objections to this, Mark makes it very clear that his priority is to save people. And that is something that remains true for his character virtually throughout the entire series. And so later on, when he is confronted with his dad and finds out what his dad has done, has found out that his dad murdered the Guardians of the Globe, and finds out that Omni-Man is only here to help conquer Earth for the planet of Viltrum, Mark quite literally states that he does not give an F about Viltrum. Earth is his home. These are the people he loves, and these are the people he will protect. So right there, Cecil had a front row seat to probably the only time that Invincible was truly at risk for turning against the Earth. And Cecil got to see firsthand Mark's reaction. He got to see Mark's resolve when it came to standing up to his literal dad just to protect the Earth. Because keep in mind, Invincible even says that everyone he knows and everyone he loves is on Earth. These are the people that he cares about. And throughout a lot of season 1, Mark shows multiple times that his top priority is to save people. He's even willing to sacrifice himself in order to do so. Even in a futile battle against his father, he continues to stand up to him. This, to me, should have been the only example Cecil needed to see to know that he can 100% trust Mark and didn't have to resort to what he eventually does to him later on in season 3. But it goes even beyond that, because when we actually get to season 2, although Cecil and Mark do have their clashes, especially when it comes to Mark going off-world, Mark not wanting to follow Cecil's direct orders at all times, and then especially when it comes to Oliver and Cecil wanting a larger part in raising Oliver, this more so to me goes into Cecil feeling like he needs to control absolutely every aspect of everything, having a hand in Oliver's growth and development, having a hand in everything Mark does. These are aspects of Cecil that showcase that his top priority priority is actually just remaining in control of everything, ensuring he can always control the outcome of everything, rather than him just having trust in someone who, in my opinion, by this point has earned it. Invincible, if he was going to turn against Earth, would have done it in season 1 and joined his father. In fact, I think there was actually a moment where he was considering joining Omni-Man. However, Omni-Man made the mistake of calling Invincible's mom a mere pet. This is the thing that I feel like set Invincible over the edge and solidified the fact that he would stand against his father. He would never join Omni-Man to conquer Earth. But none of that was taken into consideration by Cecil. Instead, all he realistically cared about was being in total control of the entire situation. And it gets even worse because in season 2, after everything happens with Omni-Man and Oliver, although they do still have a bit of tension between Cecil and Invincible, it is still clear that Invincible still trusts Cecil. And Cecil once again is shown Invincible's resolve and his determination to protect Earth at all costs, even when it's a futile endeavor. And by that, I mean, in season 2, we're introduced to Anissa. She arrives on Earth, and although she initially has a discussion with Mark, it does eventually lead to an all-out fight. And in this fight, Cecil says multiple times that Invincible has essentially no chance of beating her, and he only has less than a 20% chance of even surviving the encounter. However, even knowing this, Invincible still fights. Invincible still keeps going on, proclaiming that he will not submit to Viltrum, and he will not agree to conquer the Earth. It actually goes so far that during this fight with Anissa, she very clearly doesn't want to actually kill him, and she keeps telling him that all she wants is for him to agree to do his duty and conquer the Earth for the Viltrum Empire. And Cecil not only gets to see all of this happen, but he's actually listening in on the entire conversation, to the point where at one point during this fight, when it's very clear that Mark stands no chance and probably is going to get killed, Cecil tells Mark to agree to tell Anissa that Invincible will join the Viltrum Empire, that he will get the Earth ready. And Cecil even says, just tell her whatever you need to tell her to get her to leave. And then once she leaves, we will prepare together. We'll do this together, kid. However, very important thing to note is that Invincible refuses, and he even says no. He refuses to even pretend that he will, even for a second, join Viltrum. He wants to make it very clear where he stands, and he stands between the Earth and Viltrum. He will always be Earth's protector. And after Anissa leaves, Cecil shows up, and he goes to Invincible, and as he is helping Invincible up, he tells him that it was pretty stupid for him doing it, and that Invincible probably should have just said those words. And he even asked him, why didn't you? And in this moment, Invincible says that saying those words is something he can never do. He refuses to even pretend that he would join the Viltrum Empire. It's incredibly important to him. And it's at this moment we actually get a really sentimental and heartfelt moment between these two characters, where Cecil just simply smiles at Invincible. And to me, this felt like a very touching moment between two characters that solidified their bond and showed Cecil once and for all that although Mark is half Viltrumite and clearly still has care for his father, he will absolutely never go along with Viltrum's plan to conquer Earth. And he'd even go so far as to almost die to prove this point. And not only that, he refuses to even pretend to join the Empire. He refuses to even pretend to conquer the Earth. And this, to me, realistically should showcase to Cecil how incredibly loyal Invincible is. Now, yes, is he at times headstrong? Does he have a temper? Yes, absolutely. And could that be dangerous if it was unchecked? Yes, 100%. However, I feel like if Cecil acted more so like a mentor figure rather than someone who needs to control absolutely every aspect, it actually would have led to them having an even deeper bond of trust between the two of them. And the eventual rift that we see in season 3 probably never would have happened, because Mark would have known that Cecil at the end of the day is just a confidant, and he'd also know that Cecil always has his back, versus an actuality where Cecil just wants to have control of absolutely everything, to control every single outcome. So that's why when we eventually get to season 3 and we see the conflict that eventually arises between the two, in my opinion, I feel like Invincible is totally in the right. You see, after everything Cecil had seen Mark go through, whether it was in season 1 or in season 2, going up against different Viltrumites, putting his life on the line multiple times for the well-being of others, Cecil should have seen all of that and known that Invincible Invincible's priority above all else was to protect and to save people. However, instead of just being a mentor and instead of trying to solidify their bond even further, he does probably the stupidest thing you can do. And while Invincible is unconscious, Cecil decides to put a device inside of Mark's brain that uses sonic waves to attack his equilibrium, making it so not only can he not fly, but he essentially can't function at all. And the craziest thing to me is that this actually all comes to a head after Cecil sends not only Reaniman, but also Darkwing 2 to save the Guardians and Invincible. And again, although the outcome ended up being good and those decisions were ultimately a good choice, I feel like not including Mark in those choices was just a stupid idea and was just going to be an eventual catalyst for Mark to have a huge crash out. And I'm not saying that Invincible, as a 19 to 20-year-old, should have had a say in these decisions, but he should have been informed about them. Cecil should have known that, okay, this person might be headstrong and he might have a little bit of anger issues. However, he's shown that he's trustworthy. He's shown that above all else, all he wants is to protect the people of Earth. So I'm going to inform him that, hey, I know you had altercations and dealings with Sinclair. However, we are going to commission him as a resource to utilize his Reaniman. However, what I want to let you know is that he will be under strict surveillance. He will not be going free. His only task will be to work on these Reanimen, and also keep in mind that these Reanimen will be Reanimen that are utilizing corpses. So we're not actually defiling anyone in that way. And additionally, I know Darkwing was a former criminal, someone that you actually ended up stopping. However, when we are actually really desperate, he was one of the only people that we could call in. But just like Sinclair, we do also have this person on a very short leash, and he doesn't have the right to just go wander about without supervision. I feel like honestly just opening this kind of a dialogue with Mark from Cecil would have changed so many things and would have led to their eventual confrontation being less of a confrontation and more of a discussion. You see, Invincible wouldn't have been caught off guard by all of the Reanimen in that moment. Yes, he might have been caught off guard by Darkwing. However, he would have had a much cooler head when confronting and asking Cecil about Darkwing being there in that situation. He may have said, hey, I know about the Reanimen, and I know you mentioned that to me. However, I didn't know anything about Darkwing. What's going on there? Versus what we initially got, and we had a very angry Mark, which again, considering the fact that the last time he saw D.A. Sinclair was literally after what D.A. Sinclair had done to William and William's boyfriend, it's completely justified for Mark to have such an insane crash out, especially when you pair that with the fact that not only were the Reanimen there, but Darkwing was also there. Someone who was literally a murderer. Someone that in season 2, Invincible literally had to stop. So if hypothetically Mark had already known about the Reanimen, this would have led to a much more calm conversation about Darkwing. And if it was just a calm conversation, I feel like it would have ended a lot differently. However, even if hypothetically Cecil didn't tell Mark about all of these things, I feel like in this moment, just having a rational discussion with Invincible would have been a much better choice for Cecil than what he actually ends up doing. You see, Mark is incredibly pissed off and he's yelling at Cecil. But in this moment, instead of trying to just talk to this person that he knows isn't going to just outright murder him, he literally has 2 previous seasons as evidence for this. Cecil decides to tell Invincible that he is scaring him right now and shows him all the Reanimen, and then goes even further than that and activates a device that was implanted in Invincible's mind that disrupts a Viltrumite's equilibrium and attacks their inner ear so much that they practically can't even stand up. And then after this, we get Invincible, rightfully so, fleeing the situation. In that moment, he felt the ultimate form of betrayal. Someone that he had seen as a mentor figure actually planted a device inside of his head that is a literal weapon. And it was done when Invincible was at his most vulnerable state. So he trusted all of these people to take care of him. However, instead of just ensuring he got better, they implanted a device into him that could be seen as a way to protect the Earth. But from Invincible's point of view, it could also be seen as a way to control everything, to ensure his obedience. Because in this moment, Invincible wasn't killing a bunch of people. He wasn't destroying a bunch of buildings. No, all he was doing was expressing his anger over a choice Cecil had made. And then Cecil decided to go over the edge and actually activate this device. And that's why later on, when Cecil actually goes to get Mark from the Guardians of the Globe and brings the arm army of Reanimen, this just reinforces my stance that Invincible was 100% in the right. Invincible clearly doesn't want an altercation. He's clearly trying to fly away. He doesn't want to do this because to him, there's no actual point. No good can come of it. He only wants to fight if it means saving people, and there are no people to save in a battle against Cecil. However, Cecil continues this chase and even orders the Reanimen to beat the shit out of Invincible. And if it wasn't for the Guardians of the Globe intervening in the way they did and taking out a lot of the Reanimen, and thanks to Robot actually disabling the device inside of Invincible's head, there's no telling what Cecil would have eventually done if he was able to bring Mark back to the GDA. And all of this is going through Mark's mind as soon as the device is deactivated. So that's why when he initially stands up, number one, he knows that all the Reanimen aren't alive anyway. So taking them all out is 100% justified. It doesn't matter if it was in an incredible, brutal way. First and foremost, they are very similar to robots. And even if you want to look at them as organic life, they are not actually living. They are corpses that have been brought back. So there is no moral quandary in whether or not he should be able to kill these Reanimen or not. It is 100% justified, especially if you consider that they were all just beating the shit out of him just moments ago. And even Mark going up to Cecil and threatening him in the way he did was, in my opinion, extremely justified. Because in this moment, Mark realized that Cecil, above all else, only cares about controlling everything, ensuring that he is, at the end of the day, at the top of every decision made, and no one does anything without his orders or without his okay. And because now Invincible has to look out for not only himself, but also his little brother, who Cecil has already shown interest in, Mark needs to make it very clear that not only can Cecil not come after him, but if he goes anywhere near his family, he will absolutely kill him. And although, in my opinion, I don't ever see Invincible actually killing Cecil, even if Cecil would have actually done something, I feel like it would have been at most maybe some destruction to some GDA property. And as long as he got his family back, nothing would have actually come of whatever Cecil did. However, Invincible can't know that for sure. So to be on the safe side, he had to threaten Cecil in the way he did. He had to play on the fear that Cecil very clearly showed that he had for Invincible and Invincible's power. And I also agree with Invincible when he decides that he is never going to work with Cecil again, because Cecil in that moment proved that he betrayed Invincible, and he proved that his top priority will always be ensuring his own control over every single situation. And that's something that Invincible just could not afford. He needed a mentor and someone he could totally trust, whereas Cecil needed a weapon that he could point and control at all times. And that's why, in my opinion, it is so cut and dry that Invincible not only was valid for his crash out, but he is 100% justified in virtually everything he did and everything he said when it comes to this conflict with Cecil. And on the flip side, I feel like Cecil did virtually everything wrong. He handled virtually every situation when it came to Invincible in probably the worst way possible. Now, he does eventually make up for this a little bit in season 4. However, a part of me also wishes that once Invincible returns from the Viltrumite War, that he goes to Cecil and kind of says to him something along the lines of, hey, when we were out at battle, you'll never guess who I ran into, and brings up the fact that Cecil lied about keeping Conquest alive, once again showcasing that all Cecil is worried about is having absolute control, and he will do anything and everything to ensure his ultimate control over everything. And if that means he has to lie to his allies, he will do that. If Cecil just showed a little bit more trust in Mark, I feel like a lot of things would have played out a lot different. But I'm interested to hear from all of you. Do you agree that Invincible was totally in the right, or are there aspects of what Cecil did that you actually agree with? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.